I honestly can't even imagine.
It's nothing personal, just shell shock.
No, I get it.
So you tell us about the show.
It's a fantastical reimagining of Mary Queen of Scots. It's a sort of a blended tone of political intrigue and romance and a little historical drama and some horror elements as well.
Was it a tough decision to do a show with a character that everybody knows has a finite ending? I mean, is that difficult, or is it doesn't make you feel like boxed in?
It doesn't, because she dies in her 40s. I mean, so by 16th century standards, she lived actually quite a while. Particularly for a queen whose head was on the chopping block in many ways. I think she had a good run of it.
Are you going to be including a lot of historical figures that people are familiar with? Like we get to see the young Queen Elizabeth and that whole power struggle eventually.
Yeah, I mean, we make reference to Queen Elizabeth in the first season. We talk about she's not currently on the throne of England, but she's waiting in the wings, and then at court we have historical figures, obviously, of Francis, Henry II, Catherine of Medici, and Nostradamus. So we're all actually at court together.
Mary Queen of Scots is one of my favorite historical figures. What was it that made you decide that appealed to you about her story?
I think because she struggled. Here's what I loved about her. I felt like she was sort of a parentless child in many ways. She was crowned at 6 days old. She was engaged at 6 months old. By the time she was 6 years old, she'd been engaged 3 times, and she'd been shipped off to France. So I love the notion of sort of a girl without a country whose entire life is devoted to her country. She was more or less raised in France. She had an arranged marriage that, by all accounts, wound up being a pretty happy marriage. And and I love, to speak to the other thing, I love that that it's going to end badly for her, and that she marries a lot. She has terrible taste in men after her first marriage, and she's drawn to the wrong guy. So that seems great.
How do you balance what's like the real historical information in the show with sort of maybe some of the more fanciful elements?
I think we don't contradict the real events of her life, but we come up with stories that could have taken place in between pages of the story.
There's a lot of different historical dramas out there right now. What sets her apart?
What other historical dramas are out there?
I don't remember the name of the other one, but it was like compared to the
I feel like ours is, there's something, I don't necessarily want to compare because I'm not necessarily familiar with what I'm comparing it to. But I think what makes Reign different is there's an intimacy to it. It's a show about a girl trying to protect herself and her country and her friends. I think it has a very kind of high romantic quotient, and it has all the political intrigue and sexual intrigue that you would find in some of those other shows, but it also has a genre element, an ongoing mythology, and more than one actually.
So in the
I'm fine. No, I'm fine. I just want to make sure I don't step on anybody. There's always that unspoken your turn.
You're so cool. I love it.
In the pilot, there seems to be a little bit of maybe a supernatural element to the show. Is that something that's going to progress as the season unfolds?
Yeah, it'll be a thread through the series. There's definitely an undercurrent to it, and there's mythology. I'm not really using the term supernatural. It may wind up being some more supernatural elements, but right now I feel like the superstitions of the time lend to so much of the horror element of the show, and that there's the way I always describe it is if people believe there's a thing in the woods that demands human sacrifice, there's going to be human sacrifice, whether there's a thing in the woods that's asking for it or not. And I think there's a barbarism to the times that is a nice balance to the incredibly privileged lives that these people live with inside the castle. So we're leaning into them.
Are there certain shows you're using for reference or for inspiration on similarity to tone or how they handle certain elements?
I think there were things I was inspired by, and I think that there's obviously a nod to the Tudors and to Game of Thrones, and into any show that's that sort of a prep school in a way, because it's a bunch of young people who are thrown together in a home that really is a castle, that really in reality is like a city-state. So I think that all those dramas have been done so exquisitely, but it felt like there was room for one more, that maybe into more of a Twilight, a really solid content. And I felt like it was a very simple thing to imagine and realize that these people, they had to marry who they had to marry, but there's no telling who they live their lives with. And that, that's an existent model. It's just that the reality of Mary Queen of Scots' life, that she was married for an alliance, seemed to open up that world a little bit for us, which is that, what if those two people loved each other, but for a time, even the future King of France didn't think it was the right thing for his country? What if he looks at her and sees Afghanistan in a dress? It's a nice dress. And she looks beautiful in it, but that she would cost his country, just enormous bloodshed.
Let's go a little bit about the sets and the costumes. Everything was very lush and very robust and stuff like that too. So how are you going to pull that off on a weekly television budget?
We did it. We actually did it. We filmed in Ireland. We filmed in 2 castles in Ireland. We filmed the interiors in one castle called Charleville, and the exteriors at Ashford Castle. And then we have huge stages in Toronto. We're an extraordinary production designer. And they built them beyond what actually those castles have. In reality, most castles, the rooms are quite small, and our sets are enormous. They're incredible depth of field. They're really expansive. They're rich. It's great. I was kind of blown away with it.
Another table.